Genesis chapter 10. Probably going to do chapter 10 and the beginning of chapter 11. Chapter 10 is really genealogy. It's the genealogy of Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And it goes into them pretty good as far as listing them out as who belongs to who. And so I was reading it, and apparently this is kind of, this particular genealogy is kind of respected, I guess we should say, as far as even outside of like Bible scholars. I mean, obviously Bible people would respect it, but respected even outside of Bible scholars. As far as, because what you have here is from these three guys, you have the nations, right? You have the people of the world that are going to come from these three guys and from wherever they go. And so obviously it's sort of, I'm going to use the word, it is sort of, I guess you would say, people see it as a reliable link between prehistoric and historic nations, that we see this link between these three guys that give rise to the nations that we know as historic. Now, obviously, the names that they may have used or may have been associated with them back then are not the same as associated now. Anyhow, I was reading a bunch of this, and I really started getting bogged down in it. And I got to tell you, I was just, my mind, trying to keep who, where, what, and all this. And I really started getting bogged down. There are a few things that I'm going to point out, but here's just very generically and generally, here's how I kind of look at it. Japheth gave rise to what we might call European countries, all right? Ham gave rise to, what did I say? I said it last week, and I can't remember what I said now. But he gave rise to sort of maybe like African, Mongolian, and I said even Native Americans probably are from Ham's tribe. So, and then you have Shem, and of course you have the Semitic tribes come from him, the Hebrews and that sort of thing. So you have these three guys, and the nations of the world come from these three people. So you're beginning to have the world. So the genealogy, verse 1, this is the genealogy of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and sons were born to them after the flood. So, they all had kids after the flood. The sons of Japheth were Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Traz. The sons of Gomer were Ashkenaz, Rephath, and Togarmah. Okay. I'm going to do this one. So in verse 2 there, so one of Japheth's sons, Gomer, has a son named Ashkenaz. Now this is pretty reliably referring to Germany, or what we'd call the German era. In fact, and I Googled this just to make sure it's still right. German Jews are actually refer to themselves as Ashkenazi. So they have this, they still carry this name. So that's a link that we can understand. And again, as I said, Japheth is sort of the European sort of nation. So again, you can do that, Chase, if you want to. Verse 5, from these the coastland peoples of the Gentiles were separated into their lands, everyone according to his language and according to their families. And so again, this is just a little link in here, just a little verse in here. And it calls them the coastland peoples. They were separated. This is the only people that are called the Gentiles, which is, I thought was interesting, but I couldn't really find anything specific about it, or anybody saying anything specific about it, but they were called he does call them the Gentiles. So the coastland peoples of the Gentiles separated into their lands. And notice how they're separating according to language, according to families, and to their nations. Now, we haven't had the Tower of Babel yet where languages are divided. That's going to come in chapter 11. But understand, this is a genealogy, right? And he's talking this son, this son, this son, this son. And by the time this son has happened, the Tower of Babel has already happened. And so there are different languages. And so they begin to separate according to families, according to languages. And I hope to get to the Tower of Babel tonight. In fact, I'm sure I will. So that becomes the main, the different languages becomes the main key element that causes the people to divide and to begin to spread out and to begin to go to different places in the world. So the sons of Ham, Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. And again, Ham is the father of the Canaanites. The Canaanites are the people that are going to inhabit the promised land when Abraham gets there, when everybody gets there. That's their area that they inhabit, the Canaanites. The sons of Cush were Seba, Havilah, Sabta, Ramah, and I'm just going to go on to verse 8. And so then Cush begot Nimrod. And he began to be a mighty one on the earth, and he was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore it is said, like Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar. So Cush has a son named Nimrod. Because of verse 10, the beginning of his kingdom was Babel. Because of verse 10, Nimrod is sort of seen as probably the guy who was the leader at the time of the Tower of Babel that we'll see in chapter 11. Now, the Bible doesn't specifically say that, but it does say that was the beginning of his kingdom, Babel, and it lists some other things too. So I think it's a pretty fair assumption that he's going to be the leader. He is obviously a well-known person. It says, verse 8 says that he was a mighty one on the earth. He was a great leader. He was a great warrior. It says he was a mighty hunter before the Lord. And like Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord, he was. And if you got to do a little study, and they'll say he was more than just a hunter. He was a hunter of animals, but he was also a hunter of men. He was probably he was just one of these great, sort of fierce. I say great. I'm using that word from our perspective, or from a human perspective. He was a great, fierce, manly man, a great leader. And obviously he's going to be a great leader if he's able to lead them, that we're going to see in chapter 11, to try to establish the first community, I guess you might say, or the first civilization. And he is there in the land of Shinar. That's where all his, according to verse 10, all of his kingdoms are in the land of Shinar. His name, interestingly enough, actually means let us rebel. And everything about what he does and tries to do in the land of Shinar, specifically as it concerns what we call the Tower of Babel, is a complete rebellion against God. It's a complete rebellion against what God wanted, God's purposes. It's a complete rebellion against God himself. Verse 11, it says, from there he went to Assyria, and he built Nineveh, Rehoboth, and and Calah. So he is also, those are Nineveh, especially, is a name that we remember. But while the name isn't mentioned, Babel is and I'm getting ahead of myself, is going to be Babylon. That's where Babylon is going to come from. So he is, his footmark is still there today. Let me skip down. I don't know. So, Canaan, a lot of Canaan's descendants are people that we know of in the Bible. Verse 15, Canaan begot Sidon. We understand that they're always connected to Tyre and Sidon. His firstborn, and Heth, who most believe is the Hittites. So then you have verse 16, Jebusite, the Amorites, the Girgashites, the Hivites. So you have all those ites, different ites that are mentioned in the Bible and are known in the Bible. So and again, Canaan, because those are the people that inhabit the promised land, the land of Canaan, the Canaanites. They do give rise to all of those other peoples that we would know about. So verse 21 starts with Shem. These are the Shemites, the Semites, you might say. And children were born also to Shem, the father of all the children of Eber, the brother of Japheth, the elder. So the father of Eber, I don't know. They say this is the early, that Eber, or however you want to say it, Eber is probably the, of course we know that the Hebrew people come from Shem. They are the Semites. And probably it is through this line of Eber that they come. And a lot of people believe that was Abraham. And we're going to look here. We'll start next week, but starting in chapter 11, verse 10, in the genealogy of Shem, you're going to come to Terah and Abraham. And then we're going to start in on Abraham. And that's going to be fun. Abraham's going to be fun to look at. Verse 22, the sons of Shem were Elam, Asher, Arphaxad, Lud, and Aram. So these are kind of some names you might be somewhat familiar with. Aram is going to be of the Arameans, and this is going to give rise to what we would call maybe the Aramaic people. Aramaic is actually the language, but this was a language spoken in Jesus' day. So the Arameans, Aram, are going to be a people that they're going to give us something that we can connect to with their language. It was a very common language in the ancient world and very common in the time of Christ. The sons of Aram, verse 23, were Uz. Job chapter 1, verse 1, Job was from the land of Uz or whatever you want to call it. So possibly if he wasn't a descendant of this guy, he at least lived in the land where this guy's family took up residence or whatever. So Job was from the land of Uz. So I have here, well, let's do verse 24 and 25. Arphaxad begot Salah, Salah begot Eber. To Eber were born two sons. The name of one was Peleg. In his days on the earth, in his days the earth was divided, and his brother's name was Joktan. Just for a second, I want to look at in Luke chapter 3, and I'm going to kind of look at this backwards. I'm actually going to start in verse 35. This is genealogy of Jesus, and it's tracing him back to Adam, the son of Sereg, the son of Reu, the son of Peleg, the son of Eber, the son of Shelah, the son of Canaan, the son of Arphaxad, the son of Shem, the son of Noah, the son of Lamech, the son of Methuselah, the son of Enoch, the son of Jared, the son of Mahalalel, the son of Canaan, the son of Enosh, the son of Seth, the son of Adam, the son of God. So, and you could see those names that we just read in that genealogy. So, I just thought that was interesting. So we made a point the other day in verse 25. In verse 24. Yeah, in verse 25 it says, to Eber two sons were born. The name of one was Peleg, for in his days the earth was divided, and his brother's name was Joktan. And we made reference to that phrase, in his day the earth was divided, and we talked about how it's possible that during that time is when the land started to divide apart. I will say this, as I kind of ran this down, most people don't believe it's necessarily a reference to the land itself being divided so much as the people being divided. And we're seeing that in Babel, that they'll be divided by language. Although, in this chapter, there are a lot of verses. Verse 5 says everyone, they were separated. Verse 32 says the families according to the families of their nations were divided on the earth. The word divided in verse 25 is different from those words that are used in the other two verses. So there is a difference word, although most people still think it's just divided by language. So I don't know. Where am I at now in my notes? There I am. I'm way down there. So verse 31, I'm going to go ahead. And these were the sons of Shem according to their families, according to their languages, in their lands, according to their nations. So we see that all of these people, they were divided. They were the sons of whoever they were the sons of. And they had their families, and then they had their languages, and then they had their lands where they each developed, and then they all eventually developed into nations according to these nations. So these were the families of the sons of Noah according to the generation in their nations, and from these nations were divided on the earth after the flood. So these people will begin to divide and multiply, and after Babel, begin to spread out over the earth and begin to fill it up. So I know that was probably as confusing as it was for me to talk to you about it, that you ought to try to read it and try to keep up, read all that stuff. So it was pretty tough. But anyhow, anything about chapter 10? I probably cannot answer your question, but I would be happy to hear it anyhow. Bottom line is, all the nations of the world came from those three guys. Right? Bottom line. So Babel, chapter 11, verses 1 through 9. And I'm just going to do 1 through 9, and then we'll stop. So what we have here is another event that is going to have worldwide impact. All right? You know, the flood obviously was a worldwide event that impacted the entire world. And what we're going to have here is the same as with the Tower of Babel. So now listen. Babel, this area, it eventually progresses. I told you it's a reference. It can be a reference to Babylon, that whole area, the area of Babylon, ancient Babylon, ancient Babel. And I guess here's what I'm trying to say. Every anti-God sentiment, religion, belief, system, whatever you want to call it, every one of them comes back and finds its roots at the Tower of Babel. Finds its roots. In fact, that's why in Revelation, in that last anti-Christ, against Christ world system, calls her Babylon, right? Babylon, the mother of harlots and all that. And is because she's representative of everything that is against God and everything that is against Christ. And I already told you that Nimrod's name means let us rebel. So every belief system, philosophy, whatever, every false religion, every corrupt form of Christianity finds its roots back here in Babel. Now, we don't really think of Babel like that because we just think of it as changing the languages. But it was an anti-God system that Nimrod was developing and setting up there. Verse 1, now the whole earth had one language and one speech, and it came to pass as they journeyed from the east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. So again, this is a few generations after, Noah, after Japheth, because this is one of Japheth's seed. I don't even remember now if it's a son, grandson, great-grandson. But anyhow, so it's a little bit later. So they're all together. They've already started, I hate to just say they've already started reproducing when I'm talking about people. It just doesn't sound right. But that's they've already, there you go. They've already started being fruitful and multiplying. There you go, which was the command that God gave them to do. But he also told them to fill the earth. He said, be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth. So they had already started being fruitful and multiplying. That's very good. I'm glad they already started being fruitful and multiplying. But they were all together. They come to this place in the land of Shinar, and they found it a plain. Probably, it doesn't really say this, but likely it was it was likely a fruitful plain, which is why they would want to stop there. They probably saw some real advantages to living there, and Babylon, which would be modern day Iraq, in that area. You have the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers. In fact, now this is really chasing a rabbit, but this is kind of the stuff you read when you're reading about this kind of stuff. Of course, if you remember, when we look back in the Garden of Eden at creation, there were 4 rivers, and 2 of them we traced as the Tigris and the Euphrates. Now, I don't know that those are the same Tigris and Euphrates as exist today, but probably the ones that they found and named the Tigris and Euphrates are the ones that exist today. And some people believe that maybe by naming those rivers that, and by this fruitful plain that they were in, they were going to try to recreate this Garden of Eden sort of environment or sort of scenario. Don't know that that's right, but I do certainly believe that Nimrod was in charge. I believe that the people followed him. He was a mighty warrior that captured people's attention, and I do think he was leading this. So anyhow, they come to the plain. It's in Shinar, and then so they decided to live there. So then they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks, and let's bake them thoroughly." So they had brick for stone, and they had asphalt for mortar. And they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower whose top is in the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth." So a couple of things here. So the first thing they did is they got together and they said, well, let's start making some bricks. And I'm assuming they are thinking about, building structures or whatever. And so they had the right kind of clay or whatever they needed so that they could start making some bricks. And then they also had some sort of mortar. It says asphalt for mortar. I don't know exactly, probably not what I think of as asphalt, but they had something that they used for mortar. So then they realized they had these bricks, and so they said, well, now let's build ourselves a city. Let's build ourselves a city. So now Nimrod says, let's make a community right here. We're all here. We're all together. Let's make us a community. Let's make something that's going to keep us together. Let's make something that's going to keep us together and keep us here. In fact, that's exactly what he said. Let's build ourselves a city and a tower whose top is in the heavens. Let's make a name for ourselves so that unless we be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth. So here's the thing. God had already told them to be fruitful and multiply. And so now Nimrod is saying, no, let's just stay right here. And not only let's just stay right here, but let's build something that's going to keep us all right here. Let's build this great city. Let's make a name for ourselves. Let's become famous. Let's become popular. And let's build this religious tower. And it was a religious tower. So it talks about its top being in the heavens. And really, so I think Nimrod was trying to build a great tower. And I think that he was trying to build a great tower in stature. And so that it would mean something, so that it would be important, and so that it would be something that would keep the people there. I don't literally think Nimrod was trying to build a tower that went all the way to heaven. But what he was building was, I think, a religious, spiritual place that was dedicated to the heavens and dedicated to worship. There were all kinds, when they found these little ziggurats or whatever they are, there's all kinds of things inside of them, inscription kind of things and different kind of even astrological kind of things. There's all kind of stuff in there. And, Harry's done a lot of study on astrology here. And we think of astrology as bad, sort of voodoo. But it's God gave us the stars. And God gave us those things for His purposes. But they were corrupted. And probably corrupted back here. They probably used the stars and the constellations always before in the pre-flood era for seasons and there really weren't seasons, as I've already talked about, but they use those things, but now they're becoming corrupted again. Nimrod's going to corrupt everything. Every false, corrupt Christianity, false religious system is going to find its way all the way back to the Tower of Babel and to this place of Babylon. Probably they began to worship. They probably began to worship the angels. They probably began to worship created beings. Now the fallen ones, the sons of God that came down to the daughters of men, those fallen angels, or the angels of Satan, probably kind of like that. But the true ones of God would not have wanted that. Romans chapter 1. Verse 25 says that they exchanged the truth of God for the lie, and they worshiped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. Listen, we're to worship the Creator, not what He has created. Not who He has created, not what He has created. We are to worship the Creator, not the sun, not the moon, not the angels. We are to worship God Himself, the Creator, according to Romans 1:25. So verse 5 back over in Genesis 11, the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the Son of Man had built. And the Lord said, behold, indeed the people are one, and they all have one language. And this is what they begin to do now. This is what they begin to do now. Nothing that they propose to do will be withheld from them. So again, verse 5, the Lord came down to see the city and the tower. So obviously God knew what they were doing, right? I mean, it's not like God was up there taking a nap for a couple hundred years and then woke up and, oh no, they're building a city. I mean, obviously, I think this is just, again, a way to say that God is taking notice to the point that He's about to do something. He's about to have to act because He sees that something is going on here. So I read something today. I've thought of this about 3 times now since I've been doing this. And I read something today. Apparently, during some of the cleanup of the Twin Towers, this guy found a page, just one page, out of the Bible. And it was a guy and a fireman, and they were there, and they picked it up. And it was about the Tower of Babel. Now, they read this as they obviously are not very in touch with God, at least in my opinion, because they took from it that they were supposed to rebuild as soon as they could, and they were supposed to be inspired, instead of realizing that the Tower of Babel was actually not a good thing. It was a bad thing. But they were very amazed that out of everything that was just burnt completely up, that they found this one page from the Bible. And it's pretty incredible that it was about the Tower of Babel also coming out of the Twin Towers. I mean, anyhow, we could chase that 100 miles to Sunday and the conspiracy theorist would come out of me. So we're not going to do that. So the Lord saw the city, saw the tower that they had built. So the Lord said, he looked at them, and the thing that the people are indeed one. The thing that was their unity. They had a unity, and with their unity, they could do anything. They had a leader who they all would follow, for right or for wrong or indifferent. He had a way of getting them to follow, and they would follow, and they all were on the same page of everything. And so God said, they're one, they have one language, and they're just now getting started, and this is just what they're beginning to do. And he said they'll be able to, anything they want to do from here on out, they'll be able to do it. So the key to that unity for them was their language. If you look at this, or if you kind of think about it, with this whole false religion, the people together, obviously, if it's going to not be a God-centered thing, they're going to very quickly head straight back to the way they were before the flood. They're very quickly going to go back. And God's already said he's not going to destroy the world anymore. So he's got to do something else. Doesn't have to do something else, but he decides that he's going to stop it before it gets to that point. So in verse 7, and again, I think he says, so come, let us go down there. Now, this is God speaking. Just sort of thought it was interesting because in verse 3, the people, Nimrod and the people, they said, come, let us make bricks. It's like hey, let's go make bricks. And then in verse 4, come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower. And now God says, well, come, let us go down and let's confuse their language so that they may not understand one another's speech. And so the Lord scattered them abroad from there over the face of all the earth, and they ceased building the city. Therefore its name is called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth, and from there the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of all the earth. So God, first of all, notice this, God says, let us, we saw this all the way back in creation, let us make man in our image. It's plural, God's plural. God is triune, three, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, all three being eternal, all three being part of the Godhead, all three being God himself. So God is plural, he is triune, three in one. I thought it was interesting, he says that the people are of one, they have one language. I read some interpretations that, and it doesn't make a difference, but just they translated it as they have one lip and one vocabulary, just meaning they all spoke the same thing, right? They had one lip, one vocabulary, and so God's going to give them different lips and different vocabularies so that they have to, they can't. Can you imagine? I mean, I don't know when this took place. I don't know if they woke up one day and they all went to work and suddenly they couldn't understand the directions the foreman was giving them, or if it just happened while they were at work one day. I don't know. But at some moment in time, suddenly they couldn't understand each other. Now, I'm going to say that it's not every single person because they're going to separate by families. So probably the family there, that particular group probably understood each other, but then you didn't understand anybody else. And nobody understood anybody. They obviously couldn't get anything done. They couldn't give directions. They couldn't take instructions. They couldn't even say, I don't know, I don't have a clue what you're talking about, They couldn't do it because God confounded the language, gave them different lips and different vocabulary. So they began to spread out over all of the face of the earth. So now they begin to move over the earth, and they're going to come to, they're going to come to different places. And I guess you would say, there was something I wanted to point out here, and I thought I had written it down. I wrote it down later. Okay. So this is really where people are going to start spreading out to fill the earth. I talked, I don't remember, was it in the sermon? I don't remember. But I was talking about how the church's responsibility is to go into the world. And I was referencing Acts chapter 8. I think it's Acts chapter 8, right after they killed Stephen. And it said that a great persecution arose among the church at that time. And the Christians were scattered. And that later on it says that those who were scattered, everywhere they went, they took the gospel with them. And I remember making the point that I felt like that persecution was on purpose to make them scatter, because God didn't want them to just hole up in Jerusalem. And so he brought that persecution route so that they would begin to scatter and go all over the world and take the gospel with them all over the world. Well, obviously we know that God did exactly that right here. He changed their language in order to make them scatter, in order to make them move all over the world. So all this little family or this little clan that could all understand each other, they went over here and they started going this way, and then they started going this way, and they started going that way. And when you think about it, when they came to a place, even though they may have had skills, it didn't mean they could just automatically start doing stuff. If they wanted to make bricks, they had to find the right clay. They had to find all the right stuff. They had to start making them. They had to start gathering. If they wanted to make, tools, they had to first find these metal veins in the earth or whatever, and then they had to mine it and get it out. So it's not like in one day they could just do it. Even if they were gardeners, when they got to a place, you had to plant something and then you had to wait. Even if they were ranchers, they had animals. They had to wait for the animals to reproduce. And so what you have here, as they began to spread out, when they first spread out and went to these new places, you had very primitive cultures. You had cultures that would look like what we might call a Stone Age culture, of a people who were just hunting, fishing, and gathering, surviving while they were waiting for this development. And then once they were able to mine some of these minerals out of the earth, then we move into what we might call the Bronze Age or the Iron Age or whatever, as they began to make ceramics out of clay and that sort of thing. And so it was just something that I sort of thought about. When they first started, when they first got there, whatever structures they had to build them out of logs, rocks, or in a cave. But then they could eventually find ways to make bricks and that sort of thing. They knew how to do it. They just had to find the right materials in order to do that. So we get this worldwide migration now. And through this migration and all these people going to different places, you get now the development of different cultures. You get now the development of different I'm going to even say physical characteristics of people that live in different places. Because they're all going to different environments. So things are going to change. They're going to be different. And obviously different languages. They're going to speak different languages. But there is this, man, because man has the capacity to learn other languages. I wish I'd have learned another language when I was a little bitty guy. I do. I just wish, I don't know, whatever. That's beyond. That's not even about this. But we do have the ability to learn languages, unlike animals. But in the beginning, and eventually they did begin to learn each other's languages. But, in the beginning, they were all scattered abroad. So let me kind of close. It's kind of close. I'm going to kind of wind down with this. I need to find the book of Zephaniah. And if you want to look for that. Oh, I found it. I beat you. Zephaniah chapter 3, verse 9. So he's talking about the last day. He's prophesying about the last day. And God says, "For then I will restore to the peoples a pure language, that they may call on the name of the Lord to serve him with one accord." In the millennial reign, or in the last day, in the millennial reign, God is going to reverse the Tower of Babel. And he's going to restore to people one pure language. And it's possible that we got a glimpse of that, or we didn't, but they got a glimpse of that in Acts chapter 2, when the Holy Spirit fell and they began to speak, and suddenly everybody was like, "Hey, wait a minute. I understand what he's saying. I understand what they're saying." And they could all hear and understand in their own language. So one day when God begins to undo the curse, he's going to reverse what happened at the Tower of Babel. Because the Tower of Babel, again, all anti-God, anti-corrupt Christian, it all goes right back to the Tower of Babel and to Babylon. I'm going to stop there. It's time to stop anyhow. Any questions?
Do we have any idea how many people were there at that time?
So, we don't. And, of course, you get these guys, and it really only, for a couple of them, it really only does a couple of generations. It also does not mention their daughters at all. And it just mentions sons. And some of them it does more, and I can't remember which one did the most. I think one of them it just does a few generations. One of them it does more. So you would just have to kind of think about how fast they're being fruitful and multiplying. They act like, the things I read act like it probably happened quicker than you think it did. And again, you're looking at Babel, you're several generations down now. And you're several generations down, starting from 3 sons who are going to have sons, and they're all going to have kids, and they're all going to have kids. So you're starting to have a good number of people now. Yeah. But I don't have any, I wouldn't even know I couldn't even pick a number out of a hat. I just wouldn't know. Yes, ma'am?
You said that when they went to Shinar to build the tower, about needing tools and so forth. But back in the family of Ham, it says that in verse 10, the kingdom of Babel, out of the land went forth Asher, he builded Nineveh. And in 12 it says there was resin between Nineveh and Caleb, the same as a great city.
Right. So it said that his kingdom began in Babel. So Babel's the first spot that he was. And so then it's going to be later where he goes out and he sees it. He either builds some of these other places. Well, he does build them. It talks about him, that they're part of his kingdom. But Babel was first. Babel was number 1. That's why I say when you read that genealogy, you have to be careful, because some of it goes, it's not chronological. It's because that's a genealogy, and it's just showing you where Babel fits in there. Or really it's showing you why it fits in there, why it's important.
In this time too, it changed. The people lived a lot longer in this time. It changed right in this area.
Yeah. Someone else? All right, so we're going to start next week. We're going to start looking at Abraham. And of course, Abraham is a big deal in Hebrew history and in Bible history and in Christianity. I mean, he's the father. He's the first. It's hard to say, well, he was the very first Hebrew person, but he in essence he was the first one that God spoke to. He was a pagan before. I hate to say that, but that's what he was, until God said, I choose you.